You just spent $600 on a ceramic coating. The installer handed you the keys. You drove home in the sun, and that paint looked like liquid glass. Deep reflections, perfect clarity. You told yourself you'd keep it that way. 3 months later, you're standing in your driveway with a wash mitt in your hand, and under the right light, you can see it. Swirls hazing. The gloss is duller than it was. You followed the rules. You washed it every weekend. You used the soap they recommended. So what went wrong? Here's what nobody tells you when they sell you that coating, or that bottle of wax, or that premium wash soap. The product isn't the problem. The process is, and the process most people use, even the ones who think they're doing it right, is actively removing clear coat every single time they touch the paint. This isn't about being careless. This is about not understanding what's physically happening when a wash mitt makes contact with your car. And once you understand that, you'll see why most vehicles on the road today have paint that looks worse at 2 years old than it should at 10. Let's start with what gloss actually is, because most people think it's something you apply. It's not. Gloss is a measurement of how much light your paint reflects in a straight line back to your eye. When paint is smooth at a microscopic level, light bounces off in uniform directions. You see depth, you see clarity, you see reflections that look sharp and defined. That's gloss. But when the surface gets disrupted, when microscopic peaks and valleys form in the clear coat, light scatters. Some of it reflects at angles that don't reach your eye. The result is haze, dullness, swirls that catch the light. And here's the critical part. Wax doesn't fix that. Ceramic coatings don't fix that. They sit on top of the texture that's already there. If your paint is scratched, all you're doing is coating scratched paint. The reflection is still broken underneath. So where does that texture come from? The answer is friction, mechanical abrasion, and the most common source of that abrasion is washing. Not because washing is inherently dangerous, but because the way most people wash introduces contamination between the mitt and the paint. And that contamination acts like sandpaper. This is where most people go wrong. They think the soap is protecting them. They think rinsing the car first is enough. They think the mitt is soft, so it can't cause damage. But here's what's really happening. Your paint is covered in dust, pollen, brake dust, road film, and microscopic particles of metal and silica. When you put a mitt on that surface and apply pressure, you're not just cleaning, you're dragging those particles across the clear coat. And every pass creates micros. Most are too small to see individually. But after 10 washes, 20 washes, 50 washes, they accumulate. The surface roughens, the gloss drops, and once that happens, the damage compounds. I see this constantly in the shop. Customer brings in a car, black paint, 1-year-old, swirled to hell. They're confused because they wash it themselves. They're careful. They use expensive products, and I ask them to walk me through their process. Almost every time, it's the same. They spray the car down with a hose. They fill a bucket with soap. They dunk the MIT, and they start washing from the top down, panel by panel, rinsing the mitt in the bucket between panels, and that's the problem. That bucket is now contaminated. Every time they dip the mitt back in, they're reloading it with the dirt they just removed from the paint. Then they're putting that dirt back on the car. They think they're washing. What they're actually doing is redistributing abrasive contamination in a soapy slurry. Here's a test I run with customers who don't believe me. I take a black test panel. I contaminate it lightly with dust. I use a single bucket method, the way most people do, and I wash it 5 times. No pressure. Soft mitt. Premium soap. Then I hit it with a light and inspect it under magnification. The surface is destroyed. Scratches running in every direction the mitt traveled. I show them the same panel next to one that was pre-rinsed properly, washed with a 2-bucket system, and dried with a clean mitt. The difference is undeniable. One panel still has gloss. The other looks like it was polished with steel wool. And this is after 5 washes. Now imagine 50, 100, 2 years of weekly washes using a contaminated process. That's why your paint looks the way it does. And this is the part nobody explains when they're selling you products. The car wash industry, the detailing product industry, the automatic wash companies, they all have an incentive to make washing seem simple and safe. They want you to believe that frequency is good, that their soap is gentle, that their brushes are soft, that touchless systems are the answer. But the reality is more complicated. Automatic washes use heavy brushes or high pH chemicals to compensate for lack of mechanical action. Touchless washes rely on aggressive degreasers that strip wax and coatings. Fast detail shops use the same towels on every car because labor is expensive and time is limited. These systems are designed for speed and profit, not for long-term paint preservation. And the damage they cause is slow enough that most people don't connect it to the service they paid for. Let's talk about some of the myths that keep this cycle going. Most people think washing your car often is safe. They've been told that dirt is the enemy, so the more you remove it, the better. But frequency without proper technique is worse than infrequent washing with good technique. Every wash is an opportunity to scratch the paint. If your process is flawed, more washes equals more damage. It's not about how often, it's about how carefully. Another myth is that pressure washers damage paint. I hear this constantly. People are terrified of pressure washers because someone told them the force will strip clear coat or chip the paint. That's not how it works. Clear coat is hard. It's designed to withstand impacts from road debris traveling at highway speeds. A pressure washer at proper distance, and pressure is one of the safest ways to remove loose contamination before you ever touch the paint. The danger isn't the pressure washer. The danger is touching the paint while contamination is still bonded to it. Then there's the ceramic coating myth. People think ceramic makes the paint immune to damage. They think it's a shield that prevents scratches. It's not. Ceramic coatings are hard, and they do add a sacrificial layer, but they're only a few microns thick. If you drag contamination across a coated surface with a wash mitt, you're still scratching. You're just scratching the coating instead of the clear coat. And if the coating fails because of that scratching, you're back to unprotected paint, often in worse condition than when you started because you thought you were invincible. The same goes for wax. Wax does not prevent scratches. It's a lubricant. It helps the MIT glide. But if there's dirt trapped between the wax and the mitt, that dirt is still abrading the surface. So let's get into the mechanism of how this damage occurs. When you wash a car, you're applying friction. The mitt moves across the surface, and as it does, it picks up contamination. If that contamination is sharp, which most road grime is, it cuts into the clear coat. Each scratch is microscopic. You won't see it with the naked eye, but you'll see the cumulative effect. This is called It shows up as a cloudy, hazy finish, especially in direct sunlight or under LED lights. On dark paint, it looks like the car is covered in On light paint, it's less obvious, but it's still there. And here's the critical point. Every time you wash incorrectly, you're removing clear coat. Not a lot, maybe a fraction of a micron per wash. But clear coat is only about 2 mils thick. That's 50 microns. If you're removing even a tenth of a micron every wash, you're looking at 500 washes before you're down to the base coat. That sounds like a lot, but if you wash weekly, that's less than 10 years. And most people don't realize how thin the margin is until it's too late. The damage also accelerates, because rough paint holds contamination more effectively than smooth paint. Once your clear coat is marred, dirt bonds to it more aggressively. That means every subsequent wash has more abrasive particles to deal with. The rougher the paint gets, the faster it deteriorates. This is why you see cars that look fine for the first year or two, then suddenly fall off a cliff. It's not that they aged poorly, it's that the compounding damage finally crossed a visibility threshold. And once you're at that point, the only fix is paint correction. That means polishing, cutting into the clear coat with abrasives to level the surface and restore gloss. If you've been washing aggressively for years, you might not have enough clear coat left to correct safely. So how do you know if your paint is already damaged? There are a few warning signs. First, run your hand over the paint after washing. If it feels rough, like there's texture bonded to the surface, that's contamination. It could be iron, fallout, tar, tree sap, or industrial residue. If it's not removed before washing, it will scratch the paint. Second, look at the paint in direct sunlight or under a bright light. Move your head around and watch how the reflections behave. If you see swirls, spiderwebbing, or a hazy finish, that's Third, check your rinse water after washing. If it's still dirty after the first rinse, your pre-wash process isn't effective enough. You're putting the mitt on a dirty surface. Fourth, pay attention to how quickly your car gets dirty after washing. If it seems like it attracts dust and grime faster than it used to, that's because the surface is rougher. Rough paint has more surface area for contaminants to cling to. Certain factors make this problem worse. Dark paint shows damage more readily than light paint, but the damage is happening regardless of color. Soft paint, which is common on Japanese and some European brands, scratches more easily than hard paint. If you live in a dusty environment, you're dealing with more abrasive contamination. If your car has paint protection, film, or a wrap, improper washing can dull or damage those surfaces just as easily as paint. And if you're driving daily, especially in urban or industrial areas, your car is accumulating contamination faster than a garage-kept weekend car. All of these factors mean you need to be more careful, not less. So what's the fix? It starts with a proper pre-wash. Before you ever touch the paint with a mitt, you need to remove as much loose contamination as possible. That means rinsing the car thoroughly with a pressure washer or a strong hose spray. You want to blast off dust, dirt, and anything that's sitting on the surface. Then you apply a pre-wash foam or a citrus-based degreaser. Let it dwell for a few minutes. This breaks down bonded contamination and lifts it away from the paint. Rinse again. Now the surface is clean enough that you can safely introduce a wash mitt. Next, use proper soap, not dish soap, not household cleaners. A pH-neutral car wash soap designed to lubricate and encapsulate dirt. You want something that creates a slick barrier between the mitt and the paint so that any remaining particles can glide across the surface instead of scratching it. And you need 2 buckets, one with soap, one with clean water. Every time you finish a panel, you rinse the mitt in the clean water bucket. This removes the contamination you just picked up. Then you dip into the soap bucket to reload. This keeps the soap clean and prevents you from putting dirt back on the car. The MIT itself matters. Microfiber is the standard because it's soft and absorbent, but it needs to be clean and well maintained. Wash your mitts after every use. If they're stained or stiff, replace them. A dirty mitt is worse than no mitt. And when you're washing, use light pressure. Let the soap do the work. You're not scrubbing. You're gliding the mitt across the surface to lift dirt into the suds. Start from the top and work your way down. The lower panels are always dirtier, so you save them for last to avoid cross-contaminating cleaner areas. Drying is just as important as washing. Most people use old towels or chamois. Both are terrible. Old towels are abrasive. Chamois can trap dirt and scratch paint. You need a clean, plush, microfiber drying towel. Pat the surface dry. Don't drag the towel. If you drag, you're creating friction, and friction creates scratches. Some people use air blowers to dry the car without touching it at all. That's the safest method, but it requires equipment. If you're using towels, make sure they're dedicated. Drying towels, freshly laundered, and replaced regularly. After washing, you should decontaminate the paint periodically. This means using a clay bar, a chemical decontamination spray, or an iron remover to pull out bonded particles that washing can't remove. You don't need to do this every wash, but once every few months is a good baseline. This keeps the surface smooth and prevents buildup that will cause damage during regular washing. And once the paint is clean and smooth, you can apply your protection, wax, sealant, or ceramic coating. But remember, protection doesn't prevent damage from poor technique. It just makes the paint easier to clean and adds a small layer of defense. Let's talk about cost, because I know people hear this and think it's expensive or complicated. A pressure washer costs about the same as 2 automatic car washes per month. A set of microfiber mitts and towels costs less than a single professional detail. 2 buckets, soap, and a foam cannon add up to maybe $100 total. Compare that to paint correction, which starts around $500 and can go well over $1,000 depending on the condition of the paint. Or a respray, which is thousands per panel. The tools you need to wash correctly are cheaper than the damage you'll cause without them, and they last. You're not buying new buckets every month. You're buying them once. The takeaway here is simple. Technique matters more than products. You can use the most expensive soap on the market, and if you're dragging dirt across the paint with a contaminated MIT, you're destroying the finish. You can have a 10-year ceramic coating, and if you're washing it wrong, it'll be scratched and dull in 6 months. Prevention is cheaper and easier than correction. A proper wash takes 30 minutes. A paint correction takes a full day and costs hundreds of dollars. The system matters more than the individual products. A complete process, from pre-wash to drying to decontamination, protects your paint. Buying random products and hoping they work doesn't. So here's my question for you. When was the last time you actually looked at your paint under a light? Not just a glance, a real inspection. And if you saw swirls or hazing, did you think about what caused them? Or did you just assume that's normal? Because it's not normal, it's avoidable. And if you're tired of watching your car lose its gloss year after year, the fix isn't a new product. It's a new process. If this made sense to you, hit the like button. Drop a comment and tell me what your biggest car care mistake has been. I read everyone. Subscribe if you want more honest advice on keeping your paint looking the way it should. And next time, I'm going to show you exactly why most people's drying method is worse than their washing method, and what that does to coatings. You don't want to miss that. Take care of your paint. It's the first thing people see.